Hello guys, today I'm gonna show you how to create the seamless transition between the props and your landscape. Before I start, I should mention that you should go and watch the video about the landscape auto material and tutorial about the accumulated snow, because those two are connected together, and as I made the one unified ecosystem with biomes, weather system, etc., you should probably watch them all. In case if you want to just capture the idea how to make the blend, I'll show you the material functions that I used and I also tell you the approach how to achieve this result. Well, let's get started. And first of all, there are not only one approach, but few of them. So it can be achieved by using the pixel depth offset, then using the runtime relative texture, which blends the normal from the landscape and normal of your props, and the same approach but with the mask of using the distance field. So first of all, go ahead right in the project settings and select generate mesh distance fields, also compress mesh distance fields to save some performance. Next, search for runtime virtual texture, one moment. Yep, there is it. Enable virtual texture support. Also select it. So when it's done, you need to restart your editor and then make some changes. First of all, you need to add the runtime virtual texture volume here on your level. Then you need to create runtime virtual texture asset. It looks like this. Also make sure to select enable continuous page update, and you can play around with the values here of the size. The higher values, the more impact on the performance it will be, but for large areas and a lot of features, you need the larger size. So choose wisely. So once you have created the runtime virtual texture, you need to add it inside your runtime virtual texture volume. Then select landscape and set the bounds. By default, bounds will be shifted, so you need to properly locate it on your level. So right now my landscape has this location attribute, so they should be the same, these values, in your runtime virtual texture volume box here. Also make sure that the scale on the z-axis and the position on the z-axis are properly set, because let me show you what error can be achieved without the proper setup. So in case your level starts with the z-axis height of 0 and goes straight up, objects that are placed right under the ground, or if the shape of your landscape uses the negative values and you don't provide the proper alignment of your runtime virtual texture, this bug will appear. Oh, I'm sorry guys. Actually this prop right now doesn't use any runtime blending. I need to activate it and show you the error. So 1 second. Let's quickly wait for shaders to compile. So shaders done their work, and now as you can see, if I put my asset on the positive value here, it has the texture. When I put it down, like here, you can see that my texture works badly. So you need to update, just like this, the position of your runtime virtual texture volume. So it should also cover negative values. Well, that's the case when you use one approach of achieving the blending between normal maps using runtime virtual texture and world high position. So we talk about the setup of our runtime virtual texture. Then let's go ahead inside our landscape material, this one, and we should make some changes. Here you can see the runtime virtual texture output, and right after the layer blend I use get material attributes and expand base color and normal and put them inside the runtime virtual texture output. Also for the world height I use world position and mask it on the B channel, so it's that Z axis, and that's all set up here in our landscape material. Well, I should mention that I also made some changes inside the type of my layers here. So I made them all use world alignment texture node, because I cannot predict whether I need some pretty tiling not only on the rock side of my landscape. So for this, for instance, the landscape layer that's called soil. Here I just switched the previous material function that I used in my tutorial. It was just this one, landscape layer, on the landscape layer world outline. And this change I made to all of my layers. This function basically means that we use world align texture and world align normal and blend between them using blend distance to see the macro and micro transitions. And also this one prevents us from stretching textures on the Z axis of our landscape. So that's also done. Now let's talk about the props material, the material that we use for all of our assets on the scene. And let me quickly show you. That's how it looks like right now I also made some changes to the default material of Megascans. I've duplicated the map adjustment material function, made my own. Now it's called map adjustments custom. It uses these default textures without any detail normal or rotation attributes, and here how it looks inside. So basically it's just the wrapper around the default value that we achieve from our textures, like tint, saturation, brightness, control over the metallic, channel, also specular one, here control over the normal power, and so on. So basically you can do the same, or you can skip this step and use your own material of props. All you need is just to have it that it should be made with the material attributes checkbox selected here. So first of all, let me show you the material functions that we need to have to make not only one way of blending, but we can customize, we can use like combination of two of them. And the first one is the ground blend distance field. So basically it's the mask, like we will use this particular computations to lerp between the base color of the landscape and the props, also the same to the normal map. So distance to nearest surface, I subtract the input, it's the scalar one. So by using this, I'll make some sort of from which point of the world I should start counting. Then I divide this operation on the also particular value, and there I'll have like mask covering my props from bottom to top. And the power is for the like making the transition between lerping values to be sharper or softer. Then we need to saturate it, because it will go to the alpha channel of lerp node, and we should invert it just to have the proper behavior. So if it was like black and white on the output, it will be inverted to be white and black. So white on the top, white on the bottom, black on the top. This one. Next, material function, ground blend, pixel depth offset. You can see that this one and also this one looks the same, but with this little adjustment. We use deterrent temporal AA and multiply it by the certain value here. So this one is just the same. You can create this material function, or you can use this one and just reuse it, like with pulling the wire here, but in your material of the props, and just multiply it by this value, by this computation. So it will be here, and it will go here. And the last one is material function ground blend RVT. So it's masks that uses the world height position. So basically what we do, the same operation. So basically we subtract the world position of where our prop is located with the input that comes from the runtime virtual texture of the world height position of our landscape to see where we should start our masking. Then we add this sort of operation. We use object bound, mask it on the B channel, so it's also be checked on the height of our object. Then we multiply it by the scalar parameter. So this will tell us, like, this one should be, so think of the linear gradient from 0 to 1. So object bounds here represents like coverage of 0.1 is 10% and like 1 it's 100%. Well, we can actually shift these two here, but right now I don't want to do this because the object bounds are like cut to, like, if you think of the box extent, it returns the half size, so we need to multiply it to cover not only from bottom to pivot and from pivot to top, but from bottom to top altogether. So, and then we subtract this operation with this one, and we will receive the coverage of whole our prop using like scalars to manipulate the, well, actually it will return the mask of all our object covered with like white color instead of black. So then we divide it by the scalar attribute, and then we will return the control that can make the smooth transition between coloring from top of our props to the, not from top, but from bottom to top of our prop. So basically this one return the coverage of all our prop when it's instance on the ground, and this one will help us to make this transition from, as I said, black to white or white to black. Then we should saturate it also because it's going to be connected to the alpha channel of the lerp node, and invert it. So once it's done, we can close all our material functions and then go inside our master material of props. Also, to make it work with different approaches and to not achieve artifacts with using pixel depth offset and mesh distance field effects on your mesh, you need to select all your assets in the scene, for instance this one, and here right under the details panel you should look for affected distance field lighting. So if you use pixel depth offset, or if you use the mesh distance field masks to blend between landscape and the props material, you should uncheck it because it will like mess with your shadows and the shadowing of your props. So Also, I guess that's all of the scene setup we need to make. Yep. So we can continue. So right after our master prop material output, this one is from the previous tutorial for the covering of the snow on our ground. We should add the pixel depth offset here in set material attributes. And in case you want to use only pixel depth offset blending, you will add the ground blend pixel depth offset function provided with these attributes and make a switch. So basically, by default it's false, and if you want to use the blending, you will need to make it selected. So, for instance, if you talk about this particular asset, right now you can see that there is the sharp seam, and if I want to use the pixel depth offset blending, I should check it here. So when I check it here, I can have the controls for customizing it. And now, as you can see, my transition become smoother, like this one. So one more time, unchecked, sharp transition, checked, smooth transition. But when you play around with these values, you can achieve some artifacts, because using higher values will lead to make this object transparent in closer look. So you can see it from here. So play around with these values and choose wisely. So next one, I must say that this particular operation doesn't need to have any runtime virtual texture support. It will basically make your pixels like subtracting. If it will work in some sort of checkerbox, so it will withdraw like black one and leave only white one. So that's how we will achieve the transparent look, and the transition will become smoother. So in case you like okay with particular this one, you can stop here. And if you want to achieve something like this one, this transition, it like almost no seam here, you should probably stay and listen. Now comes another part. So runtime virtual texture sample with the virtual texture set here. If you don't do this, it won't work. So make sure that you have set your runtime virtual texture inside the runtime virtual texture sample. By default, blending between the colors will make some sort of graphical artifact. So by saying this, I mean that not this particular asset, but this one. So if I don't use the color blending, you can see that it blends, but the color that we have right now is more darker one. So we need to make this operation, we need to multiply the base color that comes from the landscape and use it as a booster to make this transition less, like more brighter. So using this one, yep, right now it looks natural. Next, here there previously was only one lerp with our snow layer, and we need another two lerp here. So basically we need to lerp between the base color of our prop with the base color of our landscape. And for the alpha channel, here you can see I have these particular operations. So if we use the approach of the world height position, if we use this particular material function, we need to get the world height from it, from the runtime world texture sample, and use ground blend RVT function, and we can just connect here. But in case you want to have more control and decide what type of blending to use, you can also make or add this ground blend distance field function, this one, and make some switches. So the first switch is between whether we need to use blending with the height. It's like not very accurate name I've chosen, but it should be like world position Z or distance field. But nevertheless, we can skip this and continue. So by default it's set to be false, and by default the distance blend, the blend between props and landscape, will use the distance field function, this one. If it's set to be true, it will use this one. And another switch is for use ground blend. Also, don't like this name, I'll probably rename it. Like, this should be use pixel depth offset for blending, and this some fancy name, I just don't know how to name it at the moment. So it means that if we don't want to use blending at all, by default it's set to false, it will return 0 here, and on the blend 0 for the alpha channel means that we use the base color of and the normal of our props, not of the landscape. So also make this change, and then when you're done lerping these values, this one becomes the default base color of your prop, and then you just need to reconnect with the blending between the snow areas. So if you don't need to have your object to be covered with snow, you go with this one to the true, here to switch. But if you want to have it overwritten, you need to connect it here on this lerp, on this operation, here on the A, and this overwriting is going to be B, and the same that it was on my previous tutorial. Here goes the alpha blending. So once we're done with the base color, then we should do this with the normal channel. So the same idea, another lerp, normal here. Then we need to make conversion between the normal that comes from the landscape, because it goes with the world space, and we need to convert it to tangent space, because if you don't do this, let me show you how it looks right now with this operation done. So basically that's the blend and it looks okay. If we don't do this, for instance, we will leave world space to world space, or just like it's basically don't do anything. Right now you will see, let's wait for shaders to compile, that our normal map will be masked. So shaders done their work, and now you can see that our normal is masked. So to overcome this artifact, make sure that you have make the transform from runtime auto texture from wall space to tangent space. So let's continue. Then this lerp becomes our default normal map, and we need to make the same operation for the snow coverage. So if you don't need to have it covered with the snow, this goes here for switch, and if you want to be, this comes as A, and our snow layer to B, and layer over paint, normal blend, alpha here. Well, that's actually all. One more thing I need to tell you. Make sure that the tiling of your prop and the tiling of your ground are nearly the same. So, because if they won't be on the same like textile density value, there will be a lot of artifacts. Also, make sure that you use high quality props for this particular type of blending, because also make sure that it's not like the straight up object put inside your landscape, because you also need to have some sort of this I like to think of it of the distortion map or distortion mesh, so it also looks more natural. And the one common problem is that in this case you can see this asset has like 90 degrees or perpendicular normal. I mean, if we just put inside here, because there is no like this one mask around it, the transition becomes so bad, because it's gonna to stretch the information comes from the landscape and project it to the prop. And even if you have the triplanar mapping both on your landscape and your prop, you can control it properly here. So for this particular case, I suggest you to make your pipeline of the level of constructing your level design, that this should be, they might use, let me show you, they should use the pixel depth offset blending. So like from default mask it will be rounded corners here, and I guess you need to have these particular rocks instance inside some like this one, or you can use decals or some noise material on the landscape painted around these rocks to make the transition more like more proper. So right now it's pixel depth offset. Yep, it actually looks not so perfect that it should. Also, you can see that this is solid rock brown color, this is like the green grass, but if the material has some like sand inside it, for instance, if you look inside here, you will see that, let me switch off my water for a moment. So here how it works with the pixel depth offset inside the nearly the same material. So how the blend works. Now transition is smoother and it looks much better. So if I switch it off, it will look like this. And when I turn it on, it goes like this, smoother one. Also, we can use, but it's not the topic of this tutorial. We can use mesh distance field, but inside our landscape to make some sort of mask around the objects that are set inside our landscape. So we can use these masks to procedurally spawn the foliage or some sort of debris with the rocks for these particular shapes, and this will work perfectly. So that's all for this tutorial. Play around with these values. I'm sorry guys, I'm just sometimes words come faster than I thought of them and I can make mistakes. So please leave your feedback, leave your requests, subscribe if you like my videos, and see you soon.